everyone, I'm Chelsea. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a requested video all about our miscarriage story. So as a disclaimer, if you don't want to hear graphic details of bodily things or hear about a miscarriage in general because it is a trigger warning, go ahead and don't watch this video from this point on because I'm going to get a little detailed and I just don't want anybody getting irritated that I didn't warn them. I chose to do this video because I not only got a request to do it, but because I've been meaning to do it. I just wanted to see that someone was at least interested in hearing about our loss. It sometimes helps to talk about a loss instead of just holding it in, and I haven't really talked about it at all, to be honest. I haven't told anyone about it except for you guys and a couple family members and friends. But because it is a normal thing that happens to a lot of women, I wanted to share my story, and hopefully it could help some women who are going through a loss, no matter how early or how late in the pregnancy the loss is. It's still a loss, and it is very sad, and it is kind of hard to get over. And I just wanted to share with you guys some, well, first of all, my story, the entire story, plus some techniques that help me cope through my loss. So the story begins actually in September of 2015, I want to say. That's when I had my Mirena IUD removed, and from then on, my husband and I decided to start trying to have another baby. Not intentionally trying, but not preventing in that sort of sense, because we weren't using any kind of protection method, and I obviously wasn't on any kind of birth control whatsoever. We knew it would take probably some time because I had been on the IUD for a few years, and we didn't know like how easily it is to get pregnant, to be honest. So we just decided to not set our minds completely to it, but also, you know, we wanted it. In April of 2016, I took a pregnancy test on April 13th, 2016, and a very faint line came up. I'm going to go ahead and insert that photo right now. Right after I took that test, I ran out of the bathroom. I was planning on not telling Anthony right away. I was planning on kind of planning something really cute and to reveal it to him, you know, and just surprise him maybe after work. But he was home from work at that moment, and I just couldn't keep it in or keep it to myself. I ran out of the bathroom screaming and crying. Oh my God, there's 2 lines on the test. And I had not seen that since I was pregnant with my daughter, which was a few years before then, or a couple years, I should say. A few years. I don't really know. But so we were just so excited. He was hugging me, he's like, "Why are you crying?" I'm like, "Because we were trying for 7 months to get pregnant and I just wasn't getting pregnant. I thought something was wrong with me, you know?" So from then on, we were just so elated. We planned to tell our parents in a cute way, and we ended up just literally FaceTiming them, talking about nonsense stuff that we usually do, and then just randomly popping the test up in the video. Or not in the video, well, we were doing FaceTime, so it's kind of a video. And they were screaming, and they were so excited. They couldn't believe it. They were just over the moon excited. At the time, we were living in an apartment, and it was our first home. But we were in the process of purchasing a house. So we had been, you know, house shopping, currently packing up because our lease on our apartment was coming up. We ended up purchasing our house, and so the moving process had begun. Meanwhile, I am around 4 weeks pregnant at this time, And so I had been, not really paying attention to restrictions very much. I was packing, moving furniture, moving big, heavy boxes around, just so excited that we got a house, thinking that nothing could ever happen to me or the baby whatsoever. And so I don't really know if it has anything to do with it. I feel like there was a lot going on at that time. Wasn't really taking care of myself. I was taking prenatals and all that. A half a year prior, I had jaw surgery, and I can get into that in a later video if you guys are interested in hearing about my battles health-wise. Not many people know about it, unless you really truly know me. Then you would know that I am not the healthiest person on the face of the planet. I am, I don't have a really good body at all. It kind of fails me a lot. And I can get into that in a later video, but this video is mainly about miscarriage, my loss and all that. But anyway, with my jaw surgery, I had some complications after, which resulted in a lot of neuropathic pain. And neuropathic pain is when you have nerve pain. So on my face, I had lots of nerve pain and nerve damage. So I was on a medication called gabapentin, and it didn't do much. I ended up coming off of it, but as soon as I came off of it, that's when I got my positive pregnancy test. That medication is not recommended during pregnancy, is very unsafe during pregnancy. I was also on some anti-anxiety medications, and I had just ended like a whole buttload of pain medication from my surgery. It was very, very complex surgery. And I wasn't the healthiest person at that moment. Most natural miscarriages, there isn't really a reason behind it. It just kind of happens, and that's kind of what this was. But I can't help but blame myself for heavy lifting, moving stuff, being way too active and doing dangerous things like picking up couches and stuff like that. Just coming off of very, very bad medication that is not recommended during pregnancy whatsoever. All these things, it just makes my mind kind of wonder if I was to blame for the miscarriage. And yes, everybody blames themselves when they have a miscarriage. They can't have someone tell them, oh, you didn't do anything wrong. You have the doctors telling you that, and then you got your friends and family telling you that it's not your fault. You didn't do anything. You couldn't have prevented it. But in a way, I feel like maybe I did something to cause it unintentionally. I hit around 6 weeks pregnant. I went to the bathroom at night. We had a fine night of packing and all that stuff, getting ready to move out of the house. And I noticed that I went to the bathroom and I had some pink in my underwear. So, I've always heard of early pregnancy spotting, and emailed my doctor right then and there, and she got right back to me, and she told me that spotting during pregnancy, especially being as early as I was, 6 weeks roughly, that is highly normal. So she said if it got worse, if you're filling a pad every hour, if you have cramping, all that, to call her, and she will get me in for an urgent appointment to have myself checked, have an ultrasound done, rule out any kind of anything to make sure that baby and I are both okay. So I went to bed very, very nervous. I was texting my best friend. I'm like, I am bleeding. I'm freaking out. I could barely go to bed. I was so scared because with my previous pregnancy with my daughter, I never bled. Texting my mom at the same time too. I was like, I'm spotting. I'm scared. My best friend said, well, if you need to go to the doctor, I can take you tomorrow. So you're not going alone. And my husband he could not get off work at all to go take me. I said, you know what? I'm going to go to the doctor tomorrow. So I emailed my doctor again and I set up an urgent appointment for the following day on the 28th. And well, the spotting happened on the 27th. So the 28th came around and I went to the doctor, and when I woke up in that morning I went to the bathroom and I wasn't spotting, I was kind of fine. My spotting had turned brown, and I thought, you know what, that's probably really normal, especially since brown blood is just old blood. So maybe I did have like a cervical bleed, or maybe there was some kind of something that was completely normal and it was subsiding and it was totally fine. My best friend and I hopped in the car and headed to my hospital. And by the time I got into the room to sit down, I noticed that, well, she did an exam. She did a pelvic exam. She, did the speculum, the duckbill thing that cranks, She did that, and she, concluded her exam, and she basically told me, this is kind of a lot of blood. Like, did put her hand on my shoulder and told me, it's not looking very promising. That kind of freaked me out, though. And she was just trying to tell me that it wasn't looking completely normal, but not to completely worry at the same time, because she has seen heavier bleeding, and baby turned out completely fine, and she didn't have a reason for my bleeding. Like, there was no blood flow, like a prick on the cervix or something like that. Like, there wasn't any blood. The blood flow was coming out of my cervix, not around it, which would be a little bit less harmful. So that kind of worried me, and it worried her. So after the appointment concluded, she handed me a pad and gave me a little wipey thing. She said, okay, wipe yourself up. I'll walk you out. Get dressed, I'll walk you out, basically. She set up for me to get my blood drawn, just to see if my levels were rising still. I went home. Basically told me to take it easy, but there's nothing I could do at the same time. So my best friend stayed with me, though, the whole day, I think up until when my husband was about to come home, and we just kind of hung out in the apartment, the empty apartment that was all packed up, and just kind of hung out and talked. So by the time my husband got home, the bleeding had gotten a lot worse. It was like a light period, I would say, instead of the spotting beforehand, and I was starting to get kind of crampy, and my doctor had told me, cramps, tissue, that's what you're looking for. If you don't have either of those, you don't need to worry. I was having cramps, and I wasn't having tissue yet, though. But my husband and I hung out, we talked, we prayed, we, sat around and just held each other, basically, like, please be fine. Please be fine, It was finally time to go to bed. I didn't want to go to bed. I was just exhausted and in pain, and we didn't have our bed in the apartment. We were sleeping in the living room on the floor with a bunch of blankets, so it was very uncomfortable. There was just so much going on, good and bad. Buying a new house, moving out, bleeding. It was just an intense moment, and I couldn't take it anymore. So way too much for me to handle. So Of course, what I did was bawl my eyes out. My husband sat there and just, tickled my back the whole time. My daughter kept, she was two-ish at the time. I would say maybe nearly 3. Yeah, 2-ish at the time. And she was just like, "Mommy, what's wrong? Don't cry, Mommy." And she was, oh my God, it was breaking my heart. Just, I couldn't, I try to stay strong for her. So I'm crying, and my husband falls asleep. My daughter falls asleep. I'm still crying. I texting my best friend. It was like the middle of the night. She lived literally down the apartments from me. She was at the same apartment complex, but she was, just around the corner in her apartment. So I was texting her. I'm like, everybody's asleep. I am in pain. She offered to come over. I was being depressing by saying, like, God's punishing me for this. And it was just a really, really rough moment in my life. And all of a sudden, I stopped texting her. I was about to fall asleep. I got a massive cramp. It hurt so bad. It felt like a pre-labor contraction. It hurt really bad. And I felt something like come out. My heart completely sank. And I walked right to the bathroom, and I looked on the pad because she told me not to wear tampons, so I had to wear pads. And I looked on my pad, and there was like a clump of tissue, and it was obviously the baby. I'm not trying to get into super duper detail, but it was definitely not a blood clot. But I just knew from that second that I felt something pass that I was no longer pregnant at all. It was awful. It was awful. From that moment on, I walked out of the bathroom. I kind of sat down. My face was completely cold. Like, I just felt like an ice cube. Like I had stuck my face and body in a freezer, and I was just, the blood was flushed from me. I was ice cold, probably stark white if you looked at me. I I shoved my husband, and I was like, "Wake up." And I told him what had happened, and he was just heartbroken. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to say. I didn't lay down. I prayed about it. I felt a little bit better. Just knowing that I knew for sure I wasn't pregnant anymore, and the worry of, please let this be fine, that was lifted off of me. I just knew it was done. Ended up falling asleep hours and hours and hours later. I just kind of stayed up shocked to the point where I couldn't even cry anymore because I had already been crying for hours prior. I fell asleep because I was literally that exhausted from bawling my eyes out, from cramping, from bleeding, from passing the baby, from the whole day just wiped out. So I woke up in the morning, and we had to begin, I believe it was the next day. I want to say it was the next day we had to move. We had to begin our moving process of moving things over and moving out. And it was just really, really, really hard. That morning when I woke up, I noticed that every pregnancy symptom that I had had that was so strong was gone. I didn't have any more pregnancy symptoms. My sore boobs were done. The frequent urination was gone. The doctor was like, "Well, I would like you to come in and get more blood tests done to see if your levels are dropping." Like, I know the baby's passed. I saw it. I know that it's gone. I don't feel pregnant anymore. Why do I need to come in? I didn't want to put myself through that. I just wanted it to be done. I wanted to get over it and move on. I wanted to just mourn. I bled for about a couple weeks, I want to say. A couple to a few weeks. I bled for a long time, and just like a heavy period, and then it kind of went into like a light period. I did take pregnancy tests throughout that time just to make sure that my levels were completely gone. By the time we ended up moving into our house, my levels, like the pregnancy tests, were completely negative. And now that I think about it, this was kind of shortly after the miscarriage. I kind of had a feeling that something was just not right to begin with. And that was because when I took my pregnancy test, the first one, it was on the day that I was due for my period. And the line was light, like you guys saw. And every day after that, I was taking pregnancy tests. They just didn't get darker. It was weird. They just kind of stayed really faint. And I wondered if that had something to do with it. I don't really know. I want to blame myself all the time. Even though I'm not supposed to blame myself and people tell you don't blame yourself. But my ways of coping through my miscarriage, so if you guys are going through a miscarriage, doesn't matter when, your gestation, when you miscarried, my best remedy is venting about it and talking about it. If you know anybody who has had a loss, reach out to them and talk about it together. Sometimes having someone who has gone through a similar situation can truly help you out because they know exactly what you went through and exactly what they went through. And you guys can kind of help each other and lean on each other. And lastly, pray about it if that's what you do. Pray a lot, because that's what helped me also, was talking to God about it. So I highly recommend those things to help yourself cope with a loss. And it's not helping you get over your loss, because you won't truly get over losing your pregnancy at all, your baby. It was a part of you for a short amount of time or a long time, it doesn't matter. Take that to heart. You're not truly going to get over it, but it will get better as time goes on. Mourn for as long as you want. Don't let anybody tell you to get over it. Don't let anybody act like, dude, you need to stop, okay? Because it's not that important. It is important. It's important to you. And it was a part of your life. It's a big moment in your life when you get pregnant. When you lose that pregnancy, if you lose that pregnancy, that's also a big moment. And that's something that a lot of women share. A lot of women have had miscarriages. Don't let anybody tell you how to mourn your loss. And just take your time with healing. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, though, and I hope that you took my story to heart and learned from it. If you are having a miscarriage, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be sad, no matter how long. But I wish you all the best in your trying to conceive journeys or pregnancy journeys. And good luck and